I think Tales of the Jedi did a really good job of giving us some Count Dooku stories that also fit really well with, like, I could not think about those when listening to this audiobook or audio drama.
Me either. And I don't mean to start this off because we're going to talk about Dooku Jedi
We
Lost.
can jump into that. I was going to start with my one major
Your negative
thing about it, and I figured
Well,
I wonder if it's the same thing.
You had a great segue. The performance in those television episodes from Corey Burton is phenomenal.
Sure.
I feel Count Dooku in that performance.
Mm-hmm.
In the audiobook, I did not feel the performance of Count Dooku.
My issue is that I often lost Dooku.
Yeah.
Ironically, I would lose him sometimes in the dialogue because I felt like I didn't feel that he was Dooku, and I would confuse him with other characters sometimes because the voice to me just didn't match. Not that the voice actor did like a bad job in his acting.
Serviceable job.
I just didn't feel Dooku in it as much, especially and you know I was talking to Melanie about that too, and she was like, "Well, yeah, but he's younger Dooku." I'm like, "Well, yeah, but here when he's older Dooku, I still don't feel it."
I could feel. I could
know?
understand where if you wanted to do a younger Dooku with a different voice, I'm like, well, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But I mean, come on.
So I think a lot of the story and a lot of the stuff is done fairly well. That was my major complaint is like if I would have just had like older Dooku having a feeling or like getting Corey Burton or whoever to kind of have that little bit, even some Dookus that we've had in other elements.
Mark Thompson is in this like he was Rail.
What he did with what was the last book we did? I'm blanking on it. Which had Rail in it, right? Like there was a Dooku moment,
Master and Apprentice.
In that, right? There's a Dooku moment or some moments in that. I felt like that Dooku fit so much more for me than this Dooku, you know?
Yeah. I would love if anybody in the chat or, comments or whatever could talk about why they feel the opposite, but it was startling for me because I honestly, when it comes to recasting, when it comes to actors, changing roles, stuff like that, I'm pretty forgiving. Like, I don't have one fan of the opera. I got 6 that I like.
Sure.
Yeah. So it's not a big deal. But when you have so much care and attention put into Yoda and Qui-Gon, they sound just like him. It makes it worse that Dooku doesn't sound like Dooku.
Yeah, because Qui-Gon I thought was real good.
So good.
Rail, I liked Rail when he, there was Asajj Ventress. It wasn't, I don't believe this one was the same voice actress of Asajj from like Clone Wars.
No, but close enough.
But I thought it sounded well enough that when it first started, I'm like, is this the voice actor for Asajj Ventress? Even before they say Asajj in the thing, I'm like, this sounds like Ventress.
I know who that is.
But when Dooku talks, I'm like, who's that? I didn't get that feeling.
Yeah.
Yoda. If Yoda was just like, well, you could do something, I'm like, well, could you put a little more into it or something?
The best, eh?
Yeah, like, I don't know. Don't, like, if they just gave him, like, some kind of random voice, but everyone else, and I think that's what did it for me, was that everyone else that I recognized, like, when it's someone I didn't know a voice for, right? Like, I don't necessarily have a voice for Sifo-Dyas that I'm attached to, but, like, Yoda, Qui-Gon, like, those felt so good. Asajj Ventress, but then you have Dooku, and I'm like, it feels disconnected. And I think it bothered me a little bit.
And I want to say it shouldn't be a big deal because it's an audiobook version, but this was an audio play primarily, right?
Mm-hmm.
The script for this comes out after or secondary to the audio.
Yeah, it did.
Which is just, I just can't understand the decision. I'm not trying to knock the author. I'm not saying that he didn't, or I'm sorry, the voice actor. I'm not saying they didn't do a good job. I still was invested in the performance.
Sure, yeah.
I just had to work.
Sure.
To make it Dooku. And maybe I just should have read the script at a certain point because it became very bothersome.
Maybe.
And it's unfortunate because I think in terms of the actual story, characters, this is one of my favorites that we've done so far.
No, I liked it a lot. I think there might be a little bit of messiness where it's like I'm hearing a Dooku story, but kind of like in 3 different ways, Like here's Asajj who's getting her perspective, and then we jump into the Hollows, and you're hearing Dooku talk as Hollows, and then you jump further where you're like just kind of in the moment, reliving it with them. So like sometimes you're kind of bouncing between like these different planes of like who's telling the story, which is a little weird.
Well, and also because it's an audio play, it doesn't read or you don't listen to it like you would an audiobook. An audiobook, you go into the character's mind, then you go out, and then they describe what's happening, whereas this is like stage direction.
Sure.
So I really got invested in imagining a stage, but imagining like a play being put on with these characters, and I felt that was really unique, especially when it came to characters watching a hollow and then that holo going into the thing. It was very stage play for me.
It was, yeah.
And I thought that's so cool.
Yeah.
I just wish Count Dooku was the star instead of the like. Yeah, okay, that's him. That's not the other. That's Dooku.
Yeah,
because
there'd be
I wasn't reading it the stage play, so it didn't say Dooku : says it.
Yeah,
it was just him speaking.
And then in your head, you're picturing his voice, and his I don't know, cadence, right? And if just the cadence wasn't quite there, I guess is the main thing, right?
Yeah.
But like I think Mark Thompson did Yoda in this one, and Yoda was great. I loved
Mark
Yoda.
Thompson
I had
did
no problem
Dooku in
Master and Apprentice,
one,
yeah. So
and it was almost flawless.
Yeah.
And then he did Rael Averoth, and he
yeah.
which
So,
like I love that they were able to bring him back because that's the voice that I know.
Yeah.
Right. So when they said Rael, I was like, oh, Rael's in this, and then I heard the voice. I was like, Rael's in this.
Yeah.
So that was an amazing.
No,
moment.
it was great, and it was his same voice. It was the same voice I had from the Master and Apprentice book and everything too.
Yeah.
So I thought that was good. So I really love that. But
quick little side note: we had a thing this week. We were watching. I can't remember, a cartoon maybe.
Okay.
Maybe Ben 10 or something, and we were like,
yeah.
We were like,
who did that voice?
Who did that voice? That guy did a great job. And we went to the cast, and it said Mark Thompson, and Aaron goes, I know that guy.
Yeah,
Who is that guy?
I went to his IMDb, and I'm like, man, he's not really in very many things.
It took me a second to be like, no, man, he's the audiobook that we love.
Yeah, and they were like, ah! So, no, it was really cool. And like, I forgot about that.
Like, you say his name down here, at Badonkagong with our droid. I remember. But anywhere else, I'm like, I don't know who that is.
Yeah, who's Mark Thompson?
What's that name?
But then you bring up Star Wars, like, oh, Mark Thompson in Star Wars, yes, I love it. So, no, it was cool to hear him in a different place, too. But I think he does a really good job. I think Dooku... I think the guy who did Dooku was great at doing what he did.
Sure.
It just, for me, wasn't Dooku. That was my main complaint. Yeah. Everything else was really good. So
let's
talk about some story
Let's start
stuff,
with
right?
some of that stuff then. Like, what surprised you in this book? What's something that when you went into it, you were like, I didn't expect it to be that way.
What surprised me? I think my biggest surprise, and I don't know why, but I got overly excited whenever it was like, Sifo-Dyas, and I was like, Sifo-Dyas, oh, yes, I'm so excited. Yeah. I get to know more about Sifo-Dyas younger and stuff.
Sure.
And I thought that was so great. And we get so much experience or so much time with him, his master, and like these premonitions that he gets. And I thought that was really cool to see. Because like when you see him in Clone Wars, you're like, this guy's crazy. Why is he crazy?
Clone Wars, he's like it's Palpatine masquerading as Sifo-Dyas, right? Like Yoda goes to Moribond and Sifo-Dyas is chained up and he's like, Master, help me, and all that type of stuff.
Sure.
But it's not really him, right?
Well, Anakin and Obi-Wan go to the Pikes, don't they, and find him
That's not
trapped?
Sifo-Dyas. That is Chancellor Valorum's like aide or something.
That's
and he's
what
like
it was. Okay,
roaches and stuff.
that's right. Okay, I was confusing those two moments.
No,
I'm like, Sifo-Dyas is in the Clone Wars.
And I did not blame
okay.
you at all because I was watching one of our friends, the normies, they're doing the Clone Wars, and I kept I was watching their reaction. I was like, all right, Sifo-Dyas is coming up, and the door's open, and it wasn't him. I was like, oh yeah, it's not him. I've seen this thing 3 times, and I forgot.
I forgot about that then, so that's my bad then. But yeah, it was so cool to get this. I don't know, just getting more information of his best friend, Count Dooku's best friend. It's like, don't call me that, and I thought it was so fun to have, like, it's the kid element of Dooku, and then getting him to grow up. But I also just really enjoyed, it's just so tragic of a story, over the whole thing.
It makes a lot of sense, and when you think about what Sifo-Dyas does, or says he does, you can understand a little bit more. So I think what a lot of casual fans, whenever they're watching episode 2 and episode 3, they're like, so people just accept that these clones were grown and like we're just going to use them, and isn't there an incredible flaw there in your plans, But this was commissioned by Sifo-Dyas, a guy that sees real stuff, and the council has not listened to him in the past. You know? So at the very least, whether if he did it or not,
because my
story is believable.
This feels, with this one, I feel more like Sifo-Dyas may have done this.
Yeah.
Before, I always felt like Count Dooku pretended to be Sifo-Dyas and did it that way.
Yeah.
Because he had already been out of the Jedi Order, so it might be more like, well, Jedi Sifo-Dyas did this? Why?
And because Tyrannus was the one responsible for recruiting Jango Fett, one of the moons of Bogdan.
Yeah. So now it's more like, well, if Tyrannus did that, did Sifo-Dyas really commission the clones then?
Whether or not it was a matter of identity theft, in terms of the story, it suddenly, like, reading this makes me think, like, oh, no, the Jedi are thinking this is the will of the Force because Sifo-Dyas saw it happen.
Yeah, and I think I saw it in the chat too, and I thought about this before, but like in Tales of Jedi, you have Dooku pretending to be Sifo-Dyas using his code to delete Kamino and stuff like that too. So like, I think there's lots of reasons to still think that Dooku did this stuff.
Yeah.
But just seeing their relationship was really cool. I loved when they went into the. It's more of just some of the minor character moments that I thought were really cool.
Yeah.
One of my favorite moments, for whatever reason, is whenever I think it's Sifo and Dooku, and they go into the what they call it, the Bogdan collection, right?
The Bogan collection.
The Bogan collection.
Yeah. The Ashla and the Bogan.
Yeah, they go down into that, and they like look at this lightsaber, and they go, "Huh?" It's like, what's wrong? It's like, I thought it'd be spikier, you know? And I don't know why, but that moment there just felt like a real moment of just someone just being like, oh, well, I thought it would be spikier. Not like not story, but just character, I guess.
You know, that moment there, because they're following the instructions of a disgraced Padawan who left the Order or was kicked out or whatever, right? Named, Cleus Tyradine, I think.
Tyradine.
Tyradine?
Tyradine, yeah.
They mentioned that it was a High Republic Padawan.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, whenever you have prose or story like that, when you get really into the nitty-gritty of details, I'm like, okay, they must be referencing something, especially when they say High Republic. So I'll be curious, as we get more into the High Republic, we're going to see that kid pop up.
Sure. I was trying to remember, like, we've only read, like, 2 books.
Yeah.
I'm like, did we have a Tyradine in either of those? And I'm like, I don't quite remember any Tyradines, but we might have, and maybe it was mentioning, I glanced over it, not knowing it connected to anything.
Sure.
But
I'm certainly going to be on the lookout.
Yeah.
I love the idea of the Bogan collection, just being these dark artifacts. Because, at least in Legends, the story of the first Jedi was that the light side was Ashla and the dark side was Bogan. You could possibly say that they're related to the moons on the homeworld.
Sure, yeah.
So I like whenever those words pop up. They feel George Lucas inspired. Yeah.
The one thing too that I thought was really cool, and I don't know if it'll blow your mind or not.
Okay.
I know you did not experience this at all. The production of this was done really well, I thought.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things.
I thought it sucked.
So like, production-wise, I thought was really cool.
Uh-huh.
I think I had trouble following it sometimes because it did like, now it's Asajj, now it's Dooku as a hologram telling us stuff. Now it's, it kind of had like 3 layers of the story of what was going on.
Yeah.
But on like I don't know, I listened to this in the car. I listened to this when I was trying to go to bed sometimes. And like, I don't know if I listened to this 3 times. 2.5 times, 1.5 times. You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
There was just so many times of me trying to listen to this different times where I'm like, I want to make sure I have all the story because I would lose it sometimes, I think. But at one point, I had headphones on and I was listening with Melanie. I was like, oh my gosh, Melanie, did you hear that? And she goes, what are you talking about? I'm like, rewind it. I'm like, listen to Kai talk. I'm like, okay. And Kai, when he's talking, he's like talking to Asajj Ventress, and it's like over here, and he kind of floats over to your left. And he kind of floats over to your right. And I was like, that's so cool.
Son of a bitch.
And I'm like, it's a really cool moment. And I know Eric cannot experience this.
Son of a bitch.
But I want to tell him about it because it was really cool. And I thought it was such a neat thing.
I was thinking he was walking away, coming back.
No, he just kind of like floated. Like, because he's this Kai, the master, right? Her old master.
Yeah.
Second master? Did she have 2 masters?
No, Kai was her first master, I believe.
She was owned or something before, right? Or like
I'm sorry, Jedi Master Kai,
Yeah.
but she was effectively a slave.
By the pirate dude, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like when he's like trying to keep her from I like the idea that he's there trying to be like, don't do this. Like, this is early time of him trying to recruit her and whatnot. I kind of pictured it being like kind of after the Gindi series of him finding her in that battle arena and stuff,
Master!
right? Yeah, right. And then Kai's here like trying to like, don't follow the dark side, don't do this and stuff. And I just thought it was a neat way of having like this Force ghost element kind of in her mind, just floating around her, and she's like, leave me alone, And I thought it was really
cool.
neat. So I'm sorry,
no, I did not experience that. I got chills when you said it. I'm like, what a great idea.
Yeah, it was such a cool idea to have that as
stuff like that makes me think like, look, we got 5 major senses, but that's because we have organs associated with them and processes in our brain. But like, what's the stuff that we don't have that for? Like, I just can't do that.
Yeah.
But there's got to be some other thing that like we just don't have the hole in our body to detect it.
Sure.
That's
I get what you mean.
Now I'm feeling that feeling so much more now.
Yeah.
Right.
I get what you mean.
Like dogs can just like, I don't know how they follow scents. Like I can You know?
Sure, yeah.
I can't tell you what direction it's in.
Yeah.
I can just look around, but they can like see it and run full clip chasing stuff.
Well, it's like we have eyes, cats have eyes, but they can see us with lines or stripes or whatever because they have like some kind of weird infrared vision thing. So, but no, it was a neat thing that I was like, I will have to make sure I remember at least this part to talk about because it's something that I know that you couldn't experience. But I was like, production wise, it just added more to it. I thought it was really cool.
That was really cool. So Kai's. I have a question. Is Kai really there?
I don't know because it's so tricky, right? Because it makes me think of in here Dooku talks to Qui-Gon and is like, I think you have a connection to the living force, maybe surpassing Yoda's. And he's like, yeah, right. Qui-Gon's like, no, that's not gonna happen.
Sure.
But I'm like, it's not very often. Like, there's not a lot of force ghost things going on with any of this stuff. So like, is it in her mind and it's like her own subconscious kind of fighting against it?
Yeah.
Because there's not too many situations that we have seen, especially before Qui-Gon, of like force ghost people sticking around and doing these things, So I'm like, I don't know. I would say no. And it's her, I think it's her own doubt trying to like convince her until she gets to the moment where there's no return.
Yeah, I wrote down one spot because I kept thinking the same. Okay, it's probably just a figment. Whatever you hear is blasted back at you in a mirror. But at one point, she does mention, she talks about real Avaros and stuff like that, and
things that she shouldn't know.
Yeah, she says, I don't know about this, and I kept thinking, okay, that's got to be like some clue that there's something going on here. Maybe it's not necessarily real. Maybe it is just, Kai, but it could be the Force taking on that identity.
And an alternate idea there could also be Dooku knew of this hologram that she had. Could there be Dooku pushing the Force and giving her these thoughts, trying to like see how dedicated is she?
I didn't really consider that, but I mean, considering the end, yeah, maybe.
Right?
There was one spot though, because I wrote that down. I'm like, okay, that's right there is evidence, at least for me, that it could be something. But the author does something very clever, where she also just very briefly mentions, like, well, I don't really know what all he said. He talked a lot. So, like, maybe she did hear about it. It's just coming out of her subconscious. I'm like, oh, sure. Clever.
That makes sense then. It kind of covers it a little bit.
Because, I mean, technically, the training needed to keep your form after death is secret training. We don't know. I can't imagine Kai being one of the very few Jedi, like Yoda, to make it to a nexus of the Force like we know Qui-Gon did and we saw in that Yoda arc. You have to start by doing these type of trials and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, and then wasn't there like a vision thing that, was it Dooku that gave it to her, where like it's Kai was killing like the pirate leader and stuff too? So like, it's like, look what he did, and it felt like either it's inside Asajj trying to like fight the dark side and it's just the last bit of her that isn't corrupted yet, maybe, or it's like Dooku like trying to seed doubt and trying to push her into the direct. Because I mean, that's what Dooku does, right? He's playing chess this whole time.
He does, and that's a really good point considering this is an audio drama, and this is all coming from dialogue and messages, stories that characters are telling. So little details can be messed up because. I mean, that eyewitness testimony is one of the worst pieces of evidence we have.
What, unreliable narrator, right?
Narrator.
That kind of idea.
Even though Dooku, who we know is pretty punctual and I'm sure has a great memory, maybe he doesn't share everything perfectly with his sister, or not. But that's another wrinkle there. Dooku's family, which I thought was really, really interesting.
I also enjoyed the name of Sereno and like being like it was a family name and it's a planet name, and the reason they do that is because it used to be a Sith planet or whatever, and their family was helping to push that Sith Empire away.
They pushed the Sith Empire
and then
away.
they kind of became the leaders of it. And I was like, that's a neat idea, because I was like, is Dooku like his last name? Is it his first name? Like, what's the rest of his? You have Qui-Gon Jinn, and Obi-Wan Kenobi, and like
Carl Dooku.
Yeah. I'm like, what is his name?
Hey, we got Sheev. Anything could happen.
Sure, yeah, right. So I don't know. Short of having just Yoda, or Yaddle, like most of them kind of have like a first last name. And I'm like, well, he's not just Count. What was his name? So I like the idea of the Sereno name being not just the planet, but the leader of the planet too. So but his father was.
Yeah, Count Gora.
I think that sounds right.
Gora, yeah, and Countess Anya. which her funeral was tough.
Sure.
That was a tough scene to listen to. But yeah, I guess it is a good point to make, that even if the details aren't perfect, we're still kind of being told certain things from certain points of view, which is appropriate for Star Wars, considering Obi-Wan Episode 4.
And from Dooku's birth, like I think that there's so many tragic moments of so many things, right? Like he sees corruption in a way, right? He sees this corruption within the Jedi Order. He sees corruption within what the Republic's doing, and then how the Jedi respond to this. You have the oh dang, I just had it. The planet that they went to that was for Bacta and stuff like that. Something with a P, I think.
Sure, I
Sounds
don't have
right.
that one. I have Asusta, which is that dark side.
The dark side with the moss and stuff.
And they had that ritual, and I was like, Jesus, okay, what's going on here?
Which that was a cool moment too. But just there's all these moments that he's seen corruption, but from his birth, like his father's like, all right, this guy is force sensitive. That scares the hell out of me because I don't like them Sith guys that we had to deal with. So I'm calling the Jedi and I'm sending him away, and I never want to see him again.
Not only that, he left him in the woods.
Yeah.
He left a baby, and he didn't like leave him at the fire station.
No.
Sereno's
he didn't, or wait for them to come get him. They were just like, leave him over there.
He didn't call some Sereno nuns.
Sereno nuns.
Like they were like, he could have been eaten by space wolves. You know?
Yeah. But
it was dark.
He just didn't care. And then when he shows up again for that celebration and stuff, he's like, why is he here? You said he'd never be back. And I'm like, man, his father really didn't like him.
Dude, I'm a space wizard.
Yeah.
So watch your tone.
It's like anger since his birth has been surrounding him in a way. You know what I mean?
It's almost a curse in a way, right? Like Dooku has that in him. And when he finally comes home, unbeknownst to a lot of things, he hears what he thinks is that, the dragon of the world, the what was the name of the monster? The Sith beast.
Terataka,
yeah.
I think, something like that.
Like that, you think that, okay, what is he hearing? And I'm going like, he's hearing his own dark side.
Oh.
Right? Like,
interesting. Okay.
That's what's in there. Like a lot of Jedi, one of my favorite things in the Clone Wars ever is when Yoda goes to the Nexus planet, and he confronts what he refuses to see in himself, his own dark side, right? Like, at first, Yoda says, I don't recognize you. I don't even know who you are. And the thing's like, no, you do. And it's like punching them. They're having a little, like, punch out. And then Yoda finally realizes, like, you are part of me, but you have no power over me. Dooku here hears his own dark side.
Yeah. And
hears a Sith beast, like, at the same time in a way. Because later, whenever that beast isn't there, he hears the same thing. It reminded me of the Episode 3 novelization where Anakin, like, has this, like, when it describes passion Anakin has, it's a dragon. And that dragon can be used for good, but it can also consume things.
Because he connected to that when he was in the like Sith room, right?
They were in like
he wasn't even on Sereno in that. Like he was like, I felt the beast or something.
Well,
yeah,
he definitely. It's like that imprints on him, and then whenever he feels the dark side or temptation,
so that makes sense.
It's like he hears that.
Yeah, there's like a resonating, and like, could it be related to like him being born on a planet that was owned by the Sith? Yeah. Is the I don't know, like how does the Force work with that, and is that just like is that why the curse in a way is there from like the get go kind of?
I love speaking in those archetype terms where it's like, well, there's not an actual curse, but when you think about that Sereno, that family is responsible for making the Sith leave.
Sure.
Ultimately is a vital cog in the Sith taking over not just Sereno, but everywhere.
Sure. Well, and it's just like, Star Wars is surrounded with like curse or prophecy or chosen one, like in these kind of words where it's like, what does that mean? It's like, well, no one knows necessarily. So there's lots of things that you could do, but I thought that was a really interesting idea. And also like he has this like animal connection thing through the book.
Yeah.
And I thought that was kind of cool. Like he had like was like a bird that he had. There was I can't remember the name of the pet.
I can't remember the name.
It got eaten by
I remember what happened.
It got like eaten or whatever, or killed by that by Crexian or something like that was its name. The one like
the invaders.
It was the person who like sabotaged the racing pod or whatever, right? So I was like, oh man, the bird or whatever it was died, and
I know, and it was so like we had a great character in Lane Costena, I think was the name of the Jedi Master.
Lena. It's like L-E-N-E, I think.
Like that. Yeah.
So,
but she obviously has this like animal handling Jedi profession, but also the fascination with Sith war beasts and stuff. So I liked throughout. I was like, interesting. Count Dooku's really good with animals.
Yeah. Well, the hospital scene was really cool too.
Yeah, that was really cool. But when we get to the Dooku that we know later, he just uses it. You know, he uses the bird. He uses the war beast that he promised. Not like, I'm not like this. I am not the Sith that will use you, my friend. And then he does, almost without thought.
Yeah, which is exactly what the Sith did.
Yeah.
And then I like that kind of it comes to a point where it's like there's that disconnect and it's not there anymore. And now he's just mad because he's been used again.
Yeah.
And he has to kill it.
Yeah, I know.
You know, and it's like, geez.
It's crazy.
Convors, like Ahsoka has. Is that what it is? Is that like the owls? Is that what that means?
Yeah, Morai. Okay, so Morai's. I always thought the Morai was the name of the
owl
bird,
thing, the bird.
Actually, the name. The Convor is the name of the species. Morai, I guess.
Dang, that's what he had. Those things are cool looking.
They are pretty cool looking.
And it came in like was helping him.
Yeah.
And then died helping him.
wish
you know.
Look that up while I was reading.
Sure, yeah. Well, like when I was going through it, I was like, how much of this should I like look into more? Should I not look into it more? I do it more. You know? And I'm like, I balance and try to.
When I get to an alien name that I don't recognize, which
like what were these one-eyed Cyclops dudes in this one? The Elysian?
Yeah.
I don't remember them from anything.
There are. Yeah, they appear in the original trilogy.
Did
very
they?
Briefly. I think maybe in the cantina scene.
Do they? Okay.
Yeah. I got an action figure. I can probably. Well, I cannot find it in the time allotted.
Well,
we have an hour left. I won't find it. But I feel like I've heard of that one. But sometimes when we're listening to these or reading these, I come to an alien species like I don't recognize that. I look it up. It's like Jim is a Kotar. I'm like, Kotar, what's a Kotar? And I look at Wikipedia, it's like, a Kotar is a species in Star Wars. Jim is an example. And there's no picture, and that's it. I'm like, damn it!
Yeah, I get you. Well, the creature that, like, killed the owl was one where I'm like, what is this?
Yeah.
It was what was it called? I swear it was called, like, a Jane or something. A Janny or something like that.
Yeah.
I was like, what's that? I couldn't find a picture. I'm like, dang, I wanted to know what it looked like.
Yeah.
So, like, there's been a few times. And then it did, like, what is this creature? Just like Krexing or whatever the name of the creature like was in that. I'm like, dang it, that doesn't help me.
Yeah, I know.
So I had that exact same thing happen. In that same moment though, when they were so the brothers racing and his like race pod or whatever it is, whatever he's flying in, gets sabotaged and he crashes and stuff, and they're gonna like, we have to investigate this and look into all that.
Yeah.
Another one of my favorite moments, and maybe it's just because like it's a very serious, tragic kind of story, but I love the lighthearted moments. And I don't know why, but I love seeing the Sifo-Dyas stuff, but just having more Qui-Gon was just so much fun. So all the moments when it's like Qui-Gon and Count Dooku, I was just like, yes, give me more of this.
Me too.
But there's a moment there when like Count Dooku's like, hurry, we're going this way. And then Qui-Gon's like, okay. And a security droid's like, you can't come this way. And he just like flicks his wrist and pushes him out of the way and keeps going. And he goes, assault of a security droid is a federal offense. And Qui-Gon's like, he didn't even touch you. He's like, what did I do, trip? He's like, accidents happen. And Qui-Gon's just running away.
That one was really funny.
I thought it was so funny. And it's moments like that that's like, it doesn't feel quite like Qui-Gon.
Yeah.
But I think that's what makes it funnier.
I like when he like went undercover and was tricking that one guy. I can't remember what the name of it was, but there was a moment where he
for the sabacc?
Yeah. Yeah, I really like that.
See, I've been watching all the holograms.
Where like he just kind of like feels bad for tricking people.
Yeah.
But we all know he learns to do that, right? Like that's why he enters a bet into the pod race. Like he just learns to go with the flow, and he learns a lot of that from Dooku.
Did you catch it was actually like last night, I think it was, because I was just like laying in bed. I'm like, Melanie, I want to make sure I understand enough of this. I'm just gonna lay in bed, just listen to this.
More,
I didn't play anything.
Sure.
I guess I played a little Marvel Snap,
Gotcha.
but I don't feel like I had to focus super hard on that, and I lost a lot, so that's probably why.
Well.
But there was a moment, and I just stopped. I'm like, Melanie. She goes, what? I'm like, Qui-Gon. They're in a moment when it's Kai. I think Kai's there, and he's been like, where's Dooku? And he's like, well, he always shows up for the tournaments. It was during that moment there, and he's like, but he never chooses an apprentice. And he's like, what do you think, Qui-Gon? He's like, quiet. I'm trying to watch I'm a Gun. And I was like, I'm a Gun? I'm a Gun?
I didn't catch that.
I'm like, they referenced I'm a gonna die?
I'm gonna die.
I was like, I can't believe they did that.
The Nikto Jedi.
Yeah, I thought it was so
didn't
funny.
Catch that.
Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh. And this was just because of last night, because I did not catch it my first time through, or like whenever I would have it just on in the car and stuff. And that was one of those things where it's like, maybe I need to make sure I shut down some things and just listen sometimes rather than having it in the background and stuff, because I did not catch, especially in this one where it's like I didn't have any other book or anything, where like sometimes with I don't know which book it was, but I was listening to audiobook, and sometimes I would turn to a page because I had the book too, and I would be able to look at some stuff for like names of like how do you spell this or what is this one, and I don't have that for this one. I didn't open a script or anything for it, but I'm like, it must be I'm gonna die. Like I can't think of another I'm a gonna, you know.
That's
so
fantastic.
I thought that was so funny.
Yeah, the moments of just listening, especially what was the one part where like you just hear all this kind of almost spiritual voices coming in at Dooku's mind, and they're saying Jedi and Master, and you know, like you hear all these voices, and then you just in the background hear apprentice.
Is it during the moss scene when they're getting
the moss scene?
That part was really cool.
I had to listen to that a couple of times
I'm like,
because I was
what
like,
else here?
Well, and now it makes a lot of sense because I honestly liked it, but I had a hard time with it a little bit.
It was probably back and forth with different things, and it was hard to understand what was going on. So, Eric, you need to like put in the one and then put in the other one. Listen to the other side.
Well, I have mono set with those headphones, but even then, it doesn't always work because sometimes like stuff comes in one channel and it's mainly over here, but it's a little bit over here. And depending on the mixing, the automatic mono doesn't work great.
Gotcha.
So it's really a crapshoot.
Sure. Well, I listen to a lot on my phone where it's just kind of like sitting like maybe in my truck while I'm driving or like sitting next to the bed. Like when I was going to sleep, I would just have it on like a speakerphone on my bed. I don't notice Kai switching sides. Gotcha. It was when I had headphones on that I'm like, oh, that's cool. So there may be more things that I missed not having headphones in and stuff too. But no, that moment was really cool too because like, there's a lot of moments within that where you have the apprentice thing. You have like it felt like moments from like movies and stuff too that were just like touching on what the future's gonna be, and it's like the dark side creeping in and taking over Dooku, and then they feel like they need to do this ritual to try to cleanse this stuff and everything. And I was like, this is a really kind of cool way to do this. And I think that's the one that ends too, where like it just keeps going, and he's like, ah, and it just screamed, and I was like, jeez. Yeah. And I like the moment, and it feels overwhelming. And even listening to it, especially with headphones on, I think kind of sounds overwhelming a little bit too, of just like there's so much going on. And like picture that being in your mind of, I don't know if you've seen stuff, hearing stuff, you know, but like, and while you're being taken over by like moss or whatever, you know, I just picture this like, gosh, you know, like what else would you do? And then he uses lightning,
force lightning,
for the first time,
and they're all so just cool. Like, let's get some raps. Quit doing that.
So that whole moment there, I thought was done really well, and I thought it was a fun thing, and like even getting some of Sifo-Dyas' like visions and stuff, like he has that thing where it's like they're all chanting Dooku, Dooku. He's like the one who will divide us and stuff like that too. And I'm like, this is it. There's so much meaning, but also it's like I don't know what it means either, you know. And it's like them trying to figure out what these prophecies can mean. And some of these things I'm like, well, I have an idea of what he is seeing or what he's envisioning. And there's other moments that, you know, the book kind of covers some of it too, where it's like there's fire and stuff, and it's like, well, that's not gonna happen. It's like, but it does, and like, he's just seeing these things. I'm like, it would be a blessing and a curse to have something like this too, and also the council doesn't listen to you even when you have predicted things to be true. Yeah. And Yoda is there being like holding back fire, which I thought was a cool scene of him.
It was a cool scene.
Him and I think it was Lane. I forget how to pronounce it in the moment, but them holding the fire back, I thought was a cool moment. But it's like, Sifo saw this. Can't you test this more or figure out some way to like, maybe we should utilize what this kid says so that we have an idea of what could be coming rather than being blind to what the Force is telling someone. Well, they always say, listen to the will of the Force. It's telling this kid something.
You're right, but, and this is a good segue, this is one of my favorite characterizations of Yoda.
Yeah?
Yeah, and I looked it up after we got done reading it, some people being like, I didn't like Yoda in this. I loved Yoda in this because he was very anti-Yoda in a couple segments, and I thought that was refreshing. But especially when it comes to the prophecy stuff, like he's not interested because he knows the future is always in motion, but the Force doesn't lie, but it shows you things that, you know, like you can trust, but your eyes can't trust. You know, like there's all this different stuff, and Yoda just has this great line. What was it? I actually wrote it down because I loved it so much. He says, "Fickle the past can be. The pain of tomorrow, the comfort of yesterday is. Only in the present should we trust." And I love that. The pain of tomorrow, the comfort of yesterday is. Like,
gotcha. like tomorrow, the worries, the pain, the things I
Yeah.
have, you're gonna be like, yesterday was so comforting because
Well, 'cause he
I
was
know what
trying to-
yesterday was. I don't know what tomorrow is.
It was the thing that he said whenever Dooku revealed that, hey, I've been talking with my sister, right? And isn't it important to kind of like care about people and your family and stuff, and like looking into the past is comforting. And when you think about Qui-Gon, don't be far off, be now. That doesn't just apply to what's happening distance-wise, or in the future, but in the past as well. And it's something I never really considered in terms of being a Jedi and staying in the moment. Is past experience builds up, and it's so hard to not think about it. The future is fickle. I understand that, but the past can be too.
Sure.
And I thought that was really interesting, and it really made me think of like, I love this Yoda because his answers are unfulfilling in a way, and it bothers him.
It kind of gives a little bit of credence, I guess, to when you look at what was it? Which book did we read where Obi-Wan? It was a book, right? Where Obi-Wan promises Asajj Ventress no harm, so they bring her to the Jedi Council to help with the. Was it a Master Apprentice? Where they do.
No. Dark Disciple. Oh, I must have a fool.
Dark Disciple. Yeah, that's what it was. Dark Disciple. Yeah. So in that moment, like a lot of the Jedi, like Mace Windu's like, arrest her.
Yeah.
But like,
arrest her.
but Yoda is like, no, and that kind of works, right? If you're looking at the past, it's like, don't look at the past and make decisions based on the past.
Yeah.
What's going on in the present? Here, Asajj Ventress is here to help us in a case that we need to deal with now. It doesn't matter what she did before. Let's deal with the present now. And Yoda's the one to be like, no. Let's do this. And Obi-Wan's like, I said no harm would come to her, regardless of what she did before. We know she did bad things. Yeah. We can deal with those things later, you know? And I think Yoda being like a voice there, it also kind of works with what you're saying there of like, ignore the past, look at the present.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think that's kind of a cool idea. All these stories keep kind of like intertwining my head.
No, I know.
So like separating them into like, which one are these? It wasn't Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. It's Obi-Wan in this. And
preaching to the choir, man. Like, it's going to be hard to, once we're in book 100, to be like, which one was this? But, I mean, that's why I often don't even talk about, like, what's your favorite Star Wars movie? I'm like, it's all Star Wars.
Sure.
I don't care.
No,
it's a grand tapestry, and sometimes the threads are folded very tight, and sometimes they're more loose, you know?
Sure.
Yeah, so I had something that I thought I wanted to go down. We had the Yoda thing already.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we've talked before this book specifically about Dooku being a Jedi and being the heir to incredible wealth.
Sure.
Which isn't quite how it's presented here, right? Like we learn a couple of new things, especially that, Dooku will, yes, he will be incredibly wealthy, but he's going to take a lot of,
he kind of takes
Bad Batch tells us he takes a lot from everyone, not just his family, but everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I always thought it'd be interesting to have a young Dooku novel like this and think about, in terms of struggles from other Jedi, one of the things that he would never have to really struggle with was, what happens if I don't make it? Because I often think, like, to become a Jedi Knight can't be easy.
Okay.
Do you think more Padawans, like, graduate, or, like, we know some of them fail, right?
Sure.
In the fear of failing, the only thing you're taken as a baby. I mean, granted, I'm sure they have other options for you to go out and help the galaxy as well, but a lot of Jedi that leave have nothing. They've renounced possession, so by the time they're out and they need resources, they have none. I always thought it was interesting that Dooku wouldn't necessarily need to worry about that, especially now because we know he learns about his family heritage pretty young in life. I think it's an interesting thing. There's a lot of people, when we think about temptation and what would you do and what's your price, Dooku doesn't really have one.
Sure.
It's his principle, which has always made him stand out of just like, as a bad guy. We know a lot of bad guys like, I'm just doing this for the money. No,
sure.
Nothing personal. Everything's personal with Dooku.
Sure, and he cares. There's lots of times in this story that I'm like, Dooku cares about these people or what's going on, and like, sure, sometimes I'm like, I don't know that that's a great decision, but I kind of understand different moments lots of times of why he makes decisions, and it's just like, I don't know. It's like in Tales of the Jedi, the moments with like seeing this senator who's taking advantage of their people, and then seeing this guy who's doing this, and it's like you're seeing the corruption of the Republic, and the Jedi don't do anything with it and whatnot.
He's like seeing his own father.
And the people are fighting against it. And yeah, you could kind of see that in there where he's seeing that. And then ultimately he kind of falls into the same thing too when he takes over Sereno and becomes Count Dooku. But he also kind of takes it, right? He's I don't know. It's his sister could have taken over because he stopped his brother, and he probably did what he had to do for the most part. He could have imprisoned him maybe or whatever. I don't know, but his brother was selling off Sereno, right? He was allowing these pirate guys to come in and all this kind of stuff,
and she's growing up, knowing what her brother's like, what her father's like, and then getting these tapes of this long lost brother who's a magical knight, that never does anything wrong. Imagine the feeling of that's someone who should be my king.
Yeah, and she compares her brother Ramil, I think was his name.
Yes, Ramil.
Into
Jinza, her name was Jinza.
Jinza, yeah. It's why can't you be like Dooku, And there's those kind of moments too, and I'm sure that makes him mad. He kind of resents him, but he also probably follows his father and what his father does, who also resents his son.
Yeah.
And maybe a little upset after that funeral, kind of situation. I don't know. So I can understand a lot of moments. There's so many people where how are they feeling and what are they doing and why are they making their decisions. But when you were talking about Yoda and stuff too, did you agree then in the moment when he's Count Dooku has said I am not a master, I am Count Dooku, and he contacts Yoda and he says, here's where I am. It's oh, figured I did, and he's I will give Lean my lightsaber to have her take that. And he's nah, keep it.
Yeah.
And it's I don't know, maybe you should have taken that.
Well,
maybe you shouldn't let him keep the lightsaber. Maybe you shouldn't let him be a Jedi.
Yeah.
But
well, I mean, that's actually the solution to the continuity break of Tales of the Jedi, or at least the supposed continuity break.
Really?
Right? Because in Tales of the Jedi, Dooku is very much, or appears to be very much a Jedi when that last episode happens and he's under the sway
of really? See, I thought that he wasn't.
Well,
he wasn't a Jedi. He was Count Dooku, but I thought it was after these events here.
Yeah, well, there's nothing in that episode to say that he's not, right? But we can now, try to kind of fudge the numbers and being actually, he had left the Jedi Order at that point.
Yeah.
But he still had his lightsaber.
Yeah.
They still call him Master. Even in episode 2, it's remember, he was once a Jedi. He has all the philosophies. He's still a good guy. The Jedi, waiting for him to come back, pretty much.
Yeah.
Right? Once he's gone and done his stuff.
I felt
I feel like it works a lot more than from what I heard some people say that didn't work.
So they thought they didn't like the way it kind of played off and whatnot?
Yeah, I mean, it's not perfect still.
Sure. Well, because who called him Master in that too? Because I can understand Qui-Gon calling him Master. It was his teacher for how long,
Yeah.
Calling him Master was probably just second nature in a way,
I'm trying to remember if Yaddle did.
Probably, but they also may have just called him Dooku,
Maybe.
or Count Dooku.
Yeah.
If they just call him Count Dooku, I feel like that works really well,
But also, too, in Tales of the Jedi, we have the idea that, Mace took the open council seat, but in this, we know that Count Dooku was a member of the Jedi Council, but he had left, and then he left being a Jedi. So I'm oh, interesting.
It's he got it at some point.
Yeah.
But then he left.
So he had been on it, but he was taken off, or he wanted to leave it.
Yeah.
And then leaving the Jedi fully. So he was a Jedi Master on the Council as well, whereas in Tales of the Jedi, we kind of see this other story that makes it implied that he never was.
Felt like he never made it, kind of. Yeah, I get what you mean with that. I mean, at the very least, if you take all the stories you have, you can be okay, well, here's where this one falls. And I think that's kind of cool, too, because you can kind of all right, well, this is kind of in this place, right? He's already had Qui-Gon as apprentice. Maybe he's moved on from having Qui-Gon as apprentice now.
Yeah.
By the time you get to the end of the book, I don't feel like he's probably had Qui-Gon graduate because he's leaving the Order. So, he's not going to be a master anymore.
Yeah.
And he didn't have Qui-Gon with him in that moment either. But I like how you can kind of look at some of those and feed this stuff into it and be this kind of fits with what they did with Tales and what they did with this Dooku book or audio drama.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that it feels like it fits fairly well. And I didn't feel that messes everything up.
No, yeah.
And
even if it did, it wouldn't really bother me so much because I learned so much about Dooku regardless of the details in the book and in Tales of the Jedi.
Sure.
And I can very easily reconcile them. Regardless if there's continuity breaks or not, but it feels like it's okay. The Force.net back in the day would be we don't even have to discuss this. It's fine.
Yeah, right? What did you think of, I don't know, what's the best, is it his rival, I guess? The story we get with Arath?
Arath, yeah,
right?
Sure.
I thought it was an interesting thing where it's oh, here's this Jedi, and there's kind of oh, Arath, he's here, and it seems like an annoyance and whatnot. But you get later on in the story and whatnot, and you find out that a council member who has been going out and finding children, which, I mean, that's what the Jedi did. They went out and they found Force-sensitive children. They brought them back in, but they would be gone for years, so you wouldn't know if a Jedi had a baby and brought it back. And I was like, oh, well, that's
interesting.
An interesting twist to this Jedi Council thing. And I felt like it added more to the idea of, like, you know, even the Jedi Council can lie and be corrupted. You know, they're listening to the Republic and doing what the Republic wants. Sereno, like, they don't want to help Sereno because Sereno didn't, I don't know, financially help the Republic or whatever it was.
Yeah, they didn't pay their money.
Whatever that was. And then it's like, look at this mind vein thing that we can get. The Republic will surely help now. It's like, no, I don't want it. It's too late now. So, like, there's all these things where it's like, it's about money, it's about politics, and it's like, well, the Jedi shouldn't be about any of those things. And then I think it fits really well with Tales being like the Jedi are losing their way, and it gives more reason to why Dooku falls to the dark side and listens to this hooded man and, you know, becomes a Sith. I like that a lot, and this just works well with Tales of the Jedi of, like, I understand more of why Dooku kind of falls.
And I also think it kind of just background information, feelings with certain characters. The Jedi Council, they don't really see him as a deceiver, right? I mean, yeah, he had this secret relationship with his sister, but he brought it to them, you know, with the recommendation of another deceiver Jedi that does kind of leave things away from the council. But, you know, when you have a Jedi Council member doing that type of stuff, and Dooku's like, hey, I told you guys about this stuff, and I'm honest. So whenever he does leave and he does become leader of the Confederacy of Independent Systems, they're still like, yeah, but he's a good guy, you know? Like, look at the other Jedi that didn't do these things. So, I mean, we're fine.
Like
we can trust
the Lost or whatever, the Lost Jedi.
Lost 20 and stuff like that, yeah. Well, Lost 19 at that point. I suppose he was the 20th.
He was the 20th? Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, because when they're looking at the busts, the statue in the archives, and Yoda's like, oh, hey, let's actually take a second and talk about this because this is important. In Episode 2, it's kind of hard to see, but in Episode 2, Obi-Wan, when he's in the archives, he's looking at a bust of Count Dooku. So I thought that was interesting.
Gotcha. Do they just, is the Jedi Order like, when you've been like a bad Jedi, you're just like, you got to work in the library? Is that just kind of like, is that kind of a thing they do?
What happened to Ahsoka?
That's what I was thinking too. I was like, didn't Ahsoka get sent to, like, because I remember her being there after she was like, oh, you did, you know, what was that, when she lost her lightsaber or somewhere around then, right? Yeah. Also, with that one, Sinube. I thought it was cool to have Master Sinube kind of show up in this. So it's just fun to have those kind of moments. But I was thinking about Ahsoka being like, didn't she get punished for the Jedi Archives as well? And it's just like, now Arath got sent to the Jedi Archives when he was bad, and it's like,
in Legends, if you were not great as a Jedi, you were sent to the Ag Corps or Corps, which is just, you were a Jedi farmer, pretty much.
Jedi farmer.
Yeah, they would, like, you went and you did, you know, science and stuff trying to grow plants. So they do have
punishments,
places for you to go if you don't exceed or if you do something bad.
Okay.
Right? Yeah.
But yeah, I just thought about that because they said like, we went to Arath, who was in the Jedi Archives and stuff like that, and I'm like,
well, even think about Quinlan in Dark Disciple. Like, he did some real bad stuff and says, well, it wasn't my fault, and they kind of like, all right, we'll give him some softball stuff and keep him around the archive and stuff like that. So yeah. It is kind of detention.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Like, you can't mess up too much there, except deleting things.
Yeah, sure.
So, I don't know.
Though I kind of like it. Like, you know, you do something wrong, go where all the knowledge in the galaxy is.
Sure.
Maybe learn about why you were wrong. I think it's a cool punishment.
That makes sense,
certainly had much worse.
Yeah.
When I was a kid.
Kind of like recollect yourself, maybe learn some new things and stuff, and find a different, I don't know, answer to something.
Yeah.
It's an interesting idea. But yeah, I was thinking about that too, and it's just, all right, that's the punishment. You gotta go to the library. Like,
in high school,
that's what I should do with my kids when they're bad. I'm like, you go to the library. You're stuck there for an hour. Do something.
Oh, you can do bad things at the library. I literally stole the Star Wars encyclopedia from our county library. I did, and it was worth it. Look where we are.
I guess now you can just print it off Wikipedia.
When I was in
Wikipedia.
When I was in high school, you could like volunteer to be a library aide, and I was library aide for like 1 quarter.
Really?
Yeah, and it pretty much just, you can sign out books and you put stuff away. But it was kind of fun. It was a small high school library, not a big deal. But I didn't feel punished, except when I was chewing gum, because the librarian did not like gum. You had to like spit it in her hand. I almost thought that was disgusting. Like, get a tissue, you know?
Oh man. What else did I have in this? Oh, there was another one too where I thought is the dang, I don't remember what the name was, but there was a chancellor I hadn't heard of, and I didn't know if like
female chancellor.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting because we have a female chancellor, I think, in the High Republic,
we do.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I think they had like lions or some dogs. Is that what it were? Like, is this one here like? It must be just kind of slightly before Valorum, I would assume, right? Because this is not.
Yeah, I would say so.
I don't know if it's
this
like
spans a lot of years.
Yeah, that's true. I don't remember exactly where in the drama it was, but I remember hearing about a chancellor. I'm like, I don't remember that one. I know Valorum, you know, and I know Palpatine. Yeah. But I'm like, I wonder where this one kind of fits in and stuff too. But I thought that was kind of an interesting thing. Just here's someone else, you know?
Yeah.
I feel like I had another thing where I'm like, oh, when I was listening, I'm like, I need to remember this, and I didn't have my notebook. I'm like, hopefully I can remember this thing, you know. But
sure,
there's so much that happens in this too.
There is, and I'm actually wasn't like super good at keeping notes. I would try to when I could, but sometimes you're driving or playing at the park.
Next it says they mentioned Valorum is one of the candidates to replace her, and I forgot about that part. So yeah, so then this would be just before Valorum, then probably, right?
Yeah.
There
was one. And it was probably just a delivery, I suppose, but there was a mind trick that was happening. And it's like, you will forget we were here. And the guy goes, I will forget you were... Who was I talking to?
Yeah, I remember that.
It just cracked me up.
No, I like that. There's some good comedic moments in this and
stuff.
Well,
there's another one where they're getting ready to, you know, like Yoda said, we can't do this. And the Master Lean Kastana, she, like, Dooku's like, but Master Yoda, and she goes, I know what Master Yoda said. Hello, how are you? The performance was really funny.
She also was like that little green goblin,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, I found her really refreshing. She kind of felt like in the vein of Qui-Gon Jinn to me a little bit.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
Like defiant, but on her own path.
Yeah, was willing to do stuff like that, right? Like Master Braylon, I think, was the one who had the kid, Wrath, and whenever they're like, nope, sorry, we can't help Sereno. Yeah, like Lean was like, well, don't worry, I figured out a way. And then, like, Master Braylon kind of got, like, a ship or something like that for them to, like, get back over there and stuff. Yeah. And she also, Lean was also the one to be like, well, the funeral, you know, it's on my way to this thing, so I'll just take them there, too, with me, and it'll be okay. Yeah. Which, I mean, in hindsight, was a bad idea, but, you know, so.
Yeah. I really thought it was sweet. I actually quite liked the pen pal, you know, Lost sibling relationship. Mm-hmm. I, unfortunately... was like, oh, okay, I kind of know how this is going to end. We know what Asajj is doing.
Asajj has to find the sister. It's like,
you don't send your assassin to go get, you know, like, as your chauffeur to go find your, you know, your friend, your buddy.
We know that she's not his bodyguard, you know, and what she becomes. So it's like, well, all right. I kind of had my assumptions of that too, because I'm like, I don't remember him ever having any sisters, you know. Yeah. Where did she go? Yeah. So that is a, I guess, kind of sad moment, but expected one too. Mm-hmm. But it's also like, in the moment of like Asajj finally, I don't know, being consumed, I guess, letting go of the light side, and falling to the dark side. Yeah, which I thought was interesting too. And they like destroy the holocron or whatever too.
They briefly kind of referenced the Genndy Teriyaki series with the
pit.
The pit, yeah.
That's what I was saying in the beginning, where like
I just thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, I thought it was neat to be like, I was found in like a gladiator arena, and I was like, in my mind, I was thinking of that
specific one,
of that cartoon, and being like, or animation style, and just being like, is it kind of like that where she just fought all these things, and then she's like, you, and he's like, you know, like just overwhelms her, and she still can't do anything. Like in the very beginning, I liked the moment of her being like standing on that cliffside or whatever, and like thinking and like talking about like, will one branch find me, and the Force will guide me to that branch where it will catch my weight. And I just thought it was interesting with
it was a good
getting in her head a little bit.
I mean, opposite, but bookend to Dark Disciple with Asajj, I thought, right? Yeah. Because here we got to kind of see her begin under Dooku, and there we kind of got to see her like be rid of him in a way.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. And getting like the voice of Kai a little bit in her head, I suppose, even if it's just in her head, or if it's controlled by Dooku, or however it's being, you know, in there. I thought was interesting because like you don't get too much of that information in Clone Wars. I think we got a glimpse of him maybe in like a vision or something. I remember talking about like seeing something where it's like a young Asajj Ventress and like her master, and I don't think we got much information on that, but just a little bit.
Yeah, it was just you know, he was marooned on that planet. and he found her. She was Force sensitive, so he started to train her. Dooku lies and says, like, well, he asked the Jedi to come get him, but they refused. I mean, I don't know if lies. I mean, he might be telling the truth. I'm not sure. But, yeah, all that stuff was in those shots in the Clone Wars. In fact, there's one, I said it earlier, but, you know, Nika Flutterman, I think, is who plays Asajj in the Clone Wars. And when she's young, she gave her, like, this lisp.
Oh,
so
really?
At one point, like when he gets shot, she goes, "Master!" And I've always thought it was it was funny rather than like serious to me. But in here, there's a moment where like all these kind of visions are happening, and I can hear. I can't tell if they're just recreating it or if they just took that thing, and I hear "Master." I was like, "Oh, that's it."
Oh, that's from that moment.
Yeah.
That's cool. I like that. Then
Yeah.
giving that fun little thing. All right. I mean, there's lots of other moments that we haven't really talked about too much. Like I mentioned the hospital briefly and stuff, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
It was one of those other moments where it's like only Sifo could get hurt in a tank of Bacta,
Yeah.
you know, and like things like that. But
I like the selection process, like picking your Padawan. They have this kind of like lightsaber demonstration, but it's not about how well you do. It's kind of how you respond to how well others do. And yeah, I thought that was great. And it was a crazy moment. I knew it was coming, but when Yoda says Dooku, like I kind of was like,
yeah,
you know. But I'm like, why am I doing that?
I know.
I
know
knew
who
it was
he
gonna
does.
be that, you know.
Sure. I also there's that moment where I think Lean is like pretending to be a Sith or whatever, and Dooku's kind of like, "I will stop you" and stuff. And
yeah, I felt like, man, this guy's going hard. Like I'm gonna kill her.
Yeah, I did too, and I was like, okay. But then like Yoda comes in and he's like, "Stop," you know, and they were like, he didn't yell. It just, his word just stopped everything.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's such a cool idea because I don't picture Yoda being like, "Stop it," you know, and I'm angry. It's just, he always has that same demeanor, but his word, everyone's like, you know, listen to Yoda. What did he say? He said to stop. And I thought that was just a fun moment of Yoda.
It was.
So, no, I think the Dooku Jedi Lost, like, audio drama, like you said, I think this has been one of my favorite listens. Like, I enjoyed Brotherhood a lot. I did like Master and Apprentice. Dark Disciple was good. But this having like the multiple voices and everything too, and the production quality that the audiobooks don't quite get, was really cool to have. So,
no, that was good. It's just once again to bookend it, just didn't sound like Dooku.
Sure.
I mean, dude, that one, the Light of the Jedi. There's a Count of Sereno in that, and that's not Dooku, and he sounded more like Dooku than this dude. You know how Light of the Jedi, like if it's Lord the Santekas or Count of Sereno, like. Even some of the like different species, like the Cad Bane species, Doros. Like there was a Doros Jedi, and they kind of sounded a little bit more like Cad Bane. Like they kind of used the archetype of those characters to inform the voice. So I always thought like that's cute. The Count of Sereno kind of sounds like Dooku a little bit, but he sounds so much more like Dooku than this guy.
Sure.
I kept thinking about that every time he'd speak.
Yeah. I just wish, like, I think it's why I also listened multiple times too, of being like, sometimes like I would confuse if is it Sifo talking or Dooku talking, or you know Arath talking, because like I didn't have that feeling of Dooku talking, and I would be like, shoot, who is this one this voice or this one this voice?
Sure.
But if it had been kind of having that Dooku cadence, I don't think I'd gotten confused so much with that.
Yeah,
You know,
I
I would have been like, that's Dooku. I know it's Dooku. You know, just
Yeah.
make him sound younger. Even Qui-Gon from Tales of the Jedi, which was Liam Neeson's son, and I think I read where like, you know, they gave him like a different accent in that than they did in the movies and stuff too. But I still felt like it was Qui-Gon, you know?
Yeah.
And
I think it helps when a character is so much younger than they usually are.
Sure,
right?
yeah. Like I think I was okay when young Dooku, but whenever it's like Asajj Ventress being electrocuted and stuff.
I mean, even if we go back to the beginning of Blind Wave, those videos, I'm like, man, we sound different.
Sure.
That was only 7 years ago or
Yeah.
8 years ago, you know? Yeah.